Welcome to Stewardology, a podcast where two worlds collide. In this show, financial advisor Tim Russell and Pastor Drew Gysi are joined by me, producer Tyler Rutherford, to explore the intersection of financial stewardship and theology. Their unique perspectives help Christians and churches understand and apply a biblical framework for everyday financial decisions so Christians everywhere can grow in their walk with Christ through biblical stewardship. Before we get started, we just wanted you to know that the topics discussed in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific investment advice or recommendations. Investment and investment strategies involve risk, including the potential loss of principal, and past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Securities and advisory services are offered through Genius Wealth Management, member FINRA, and SIPC. Without further ado, here are your hosts, Tim Russell, Drew Gysi, and Tyler Rutherford. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Stewardology Podcast. My name is Tyler, and I'm here with my co-host, Drew Gysi.
Hey there, everybody.
And Tim Russell.
What's up?
So, minimum wage laws sound like a lifeline. It sounds like something that's good, like it's helping workers earn a fair wage. Yep. But what if they also create unseen harm? Pricing some out of jobs or driving up costs for everyone else. Today, we're going to dive into the question, are minimum wage laws harmful? This is probably something you haven't thought about. I know I hadn't thought of it until we started talking through this episode. So as we explore this, let's remember Proverbs 16:8. It says, better a little with righteousness than much gain with injustice. So today we're going to get a little nerdy. We're going to talk some economics and talk about whether or not...
Nerdy?
Nerdy.
This is fun stuff. Oh, my word.
I'm on Tyler's side. I'm with you, Tyler.
Tim is very excited.
I will convince you by the end that this is not nerdy. This is like really like core of economy, critically important stuff that's incredibly interesting, compelling, and gets your juices flowing.
I agree that will happen. But I'm with Tyler. It's still nerdy.
So let's get into it. Let's talk some economics. Let's talk minimum wage laws. I know, Tim, you have had a lot of thought going into this conversation. You've read a lot of books on this topic.
Yeah.
And so, you even brought some with you today.
Brought books.
We are in trouble.
I have.
May I just say to our listening audience, grab a cup of this coffee. Join us.
Oh, come on.
It'll be interesting.
You make it sound like we're talking about tax policy or something.
No, that's even worse. You all right? You need the big coffee for tax policy.
So can I just start with I want to read a quote from a guy named Henry Hazlitt. He wrote a book called Economics in One Lesson. This is a really phenomenal little book. You can see it here. I'm holding it up, or if you're listening to the audio version, there's a link in the podcast to go out and purchase this book. It's not brain numbing. It really isn't. I listened to the audiobook. I found it very helpful and compelling. And then I sat down and read the actual print book and got even more out of it. So again, I highly recommend it. But he has this quote. He says this: we've already seen some of the harmful results of arbitrary government efforts to raise the price in favor of a commodity. The same sort of harmful results follow efforts to raise the wages through minimum wage laws. This is not surprising because wages are a form of prices. And while minimum wage laws may help a small group create a bigger income, it is harmful in its effects on the rest of the population. The harmful effects exceed any possible good.
Wow, that's
a
bold statement.
That's right. That's a big statement, and we're going to break it down, and I'll explain how those things can be true. But I want to start by he says, economics in one lesson. What's the lesson? Well, that lesson can be boiled down to one sentence, and I'm going to share that one sentence with you. Here it is. He says this: the whole of economics can be reduced to one single lesson, and that lesson can be reduced to one single sentence. This is it. The art of economics consists in looking not merely at the immediate, but at the long-term effects of any act or policy. It consists in tracing those consequences of the policy, not merely for that one group, but for all groups. Okay, first of all, I don't know Hazlitt's theological position. I'm pretty confident he's not a believer. He's probably an atheist. That statement corresponds so well with biblical Christian thinking.
Mm-hmm.
How? It corresponds with Christianity because it is a long-term focused, not short-term focused. We don't just deal with the immediate present crisis. We also have to think about the long-term downstream impacts of anything we choose to do to deal with a particular problem. Have you ever heard the phrase, the cure is worse than the disease, or the treatment is worse than the disease? Mm-hmm. So many times when it comes to economics, the policies that are produced in our legislature are so many times they're the cure is worse than the disease. The problems that the treatments to this alleged problem is so many times worse than the actual problem itself. Minimum wage laws is one of those circumstances. So let's get into this.
Yeah, so the conversation on minimum wage is typically driven by what we talked about last week, which is inflation, right? The costs of everything is going up. And so therefore we think the solution is, well, let's just raise everyone's wages to try to meet the expense of everything that we have. So Tim, why don't you talk to us about the relationship between wages and inflation, and let's get into it there.
Well, we talked about inflation as it goes, as cost of goods and services increase faster than wages increase. It causes problems because we don't have the purchasing power of our dollars being able to keep pace with the money that we have to spend just to provide for the necessities of life. So inflation is an absolute factor. And there are people in the seats of power that say, hey, people can't afford to live on, I think the minimum wage today is $7.25.
$7.25.
They can't afford to live on $7.25 an hour. Yeah. Do you know anyone who actually makes $7.25 an hour? I don't. I don't know anyone who makes $7.25 an hour. In fact, at our company, like, no one's even close to that. So I don't know what this complaint is all about, because the only person that's being paid $7.25 an hour is someone whose work is not worth more than that. And if you arbitrarily say, well, you can't pay this person any less than, say, $12 an hour, you don't make the work that person does at $7.25 automatically worth more than $12 an hour. So that doesn't work. You don't necessarily solve the problem by forcing the minimum wage to be higher. What we do is we cause more unemployment, but that kind of gets to a topic that we're going to get to maybe a little later in our discussion.
So what about the inverse? Is there ever a situation where wages rise faster than inflation?
All the time. All the time.
Is it sustainable?
Generally speaking, yes, as long as productivity and output is increasing.
So there's a dancing act between the two.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But here's the thing. An effective business is not going to pay minimum wage for employees, because if they're paying someone $7.25 an hour for work that's generating $50 an hour, they can't keep that employee at $7.50. That employee is more valuable, and they will go find someone who's going to pay them $15 an hour,
right,
or $25 an hour, or $30 an hour to generate $50 in value. So it absolutely is destructive to businesses to simply pay people minimum wage. Yeah. They're not going to do it.
Yeah.
In fact, when we had COVID going on, and we had this great resignation moment where there were a vast number of people who were resigning from one job to take another job because they could get a 25% pay raise, or whatever the insane amount was.
It was crazy money.
As a company, knowing this, knowing the value of the work that my team members are generating, I said, I don't want to lose a team member and have to replace them for a ridiculously high number. I'd rather give the team members that I've trained that are incredibly valuable to me, I'd rather give them a raise now and even another raise later in this year so that I can afford to keep them happy and keep them here in my company. That is when you allow businesses who are run ethically and honestly to do what they do without forcing some kind of arbitrary price measure by saying someone's work at a minimum level is worth only this amount.
And Tim, I remember when you did that. I remember it very clearly, and we felt respected as employees. We felt valued by one another, but more so by you. And that meant a lot, I think, to us as employees. It's like you had our back. Because we saw what was going on out there. We saw the pricing that was going on. And I just want to say 2 thumbs up to all the other owners of businesses that did that same thing. They were not looking at pulling people from other locations, but they valued their people enough to say, you know what, we're going to rise this ship together and make this thing float in newer and better directions.
And they weren't legally mandated to do it.
Not whatsoever. Yes. And it's out of the goodness of their heart. And because it's cheaper to keep an employee than it is to bring a new one in and train them.
Absolutely.
The cost of training a new employee. I worked for businesses where I did a lot of training. Volumes of time and money goes into that. Let's keep who we have. As long as they're working good and they're doing a good job, keep them going.
Yeah, so I think then like we talked about business owners raising wages out of the goodness of their heart because they appreciate their people. And so, okay, well, can we mandate that? So let's ask the question, is minimum wage the solution? And I think a good way to answer this question is to ask some of history's economists. So here's what we'll do. I'll read some quotes. I'll read a quote, and then Tim, why don't you give me your commentary on it? And then we'll go to the next quote, and we'll do some commentary. And we'll go that route and kind of generate some discussion. These are all quotes that Tim had provided for us via some books that he had. So I'll read them, and then that way Tim can comment on them. So this first quote is from a man named Walter Williams. He says, "The real problem is that workers are not so much underpaid as they are underskilled. The real task is helping those people become skilled. Congress cannot do this simply by declaring that as of such and such a date, everyone's productivity is now worth $7.25 an hour or more. This makes as much sense and does just about as much harm as doctors curing patients simply by declaring that they are cured." Ooh. What are your thoughts on that?
What a quote.
Well, first of all, I wouldn't have given it to you if I didn't wholeheartedly agree with it. So when I asked the question, who do you know that makes $7.25 an hour? I mean, like you go to McDonald's and you see they're offering people like $15 an hour or more to start flipping burgers or, making fries. I don't know anyone making $7.50 an hour. Or $7.25 an hour. I don't. The reason is because those are significantly underskilled people. The value of their work is not sufficient to support more than $7.25 an hour. So I think that's important for us to look at. This quote, however, came to my attention from a book called No Free Lunch. It's from another financial advisor that I respect. His name is David Bahnsen. This book is called No Free Lunch, 250 Economic Truths. Now, David Bahnsen is a believer. Really well-trained in the School of Economics. And I listen to his content a lot, and I've got a lot of respect for it. Now, in this book, he's not teaching biblical truths, but he does provide some very well-thought explanations. And with regard to the quote that you just provided about the real problem is not so much that they're underpaid, but they're underskilled. You can't just make the value of their work more by declaring that the minimum wage is a certain dollar amount. So Bahnsen says this: if everyone in the minimum wage debate could absorb this message, the entire debate could go away. We don't lose weight by altering the scales. We don't solve the value of our output by declaring that the value is higher. We solve for output. We solve for the value of our productivity. We have to be more productive. So you need to become higher skilled in order to justify a higher compensation.
That's what we talked about last episode. We had a good discussion about this.
Yeah, how do you deal with inflation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Become more valuable.
Become more valuable. Read books. Train yourself. Increase your skill set. Those are those key things, and he speaks right to it here.
Yeah.
So another one of history's economists, Henry Hazlitt. Tim, you have a lot to say about him, and I'm excited to get into it. But one of the quotes that he has here that you had pointed out was, "You cannot make a man worth a given amount by making it illegal for anyone to offer him anything less. You merely deprive him of the right to earn the amount that his abilities and his situation would permit him to earn, while you deprive the economy of the modest service that he is capable of rendering. In brief, for a low wage, you substitute unemployment. You do harm all around with no comparable compensation."
Yeah. Let that sink in for a minute. Okay, that comes from this book, Economics in One Lesson. And look, if I've got someone who is low skilled, maybe they're disabled or they're not able to do a lot of high value work for any number of reasons. Maybe they've got a disability, an intellectual disability. If all of a sudden I say it's impossible or illegal for me to pay him or her less than X dollar amount, what am I going to do? I'm not going to employ them. They're going to have to go on unemployment or disability income or some other form of welfare. So here's the problem. They're going to make less than minimum wage in welfare. They are. There's a moral problem if minimum wage laws are less than welfare. If we have someone who could make $7.25 an hour working hard, or they can make $8 an hour sitting home doing nothing, who's going to do $7.25 an hour? No one. So we deprive the economy of the service and work that his station allows. We get no economic output from that person, and now he's on the dole, the tax dole that we have to be spending month in, month out, and we deprive this poor worker of their value, their meaning, their dignity, and their worth. This is hateful. Minimum wage laws are hateful laws. They destroy the image of God placed upon mankind by saying you're not worth it. Your value of your work isn't worth an employer giving you a job to do a simple thing. Now, I'm not trying to diminish the reality that people who live or can only provide minimum wage labor, they're not able to make it. And I get that there definitely is a problem. But through unemployment, through welfare, they're not going to be having a living wage either. So we want them to be working with their own hands, providing for their own needs to the best of their limited abilities? Or do you want the government to simply pay for it and let that person have no worth, value, or dignity, sit home and do nothing, collecting a paycheck? How does that help their self-worth, their impact to society? It doesn't. It deprives everyone. Hazlitt is absolutely dead on. Minimum wage laws are hateful to the underskilled and lowly skilled workers. It's destructive to our teens. If our teenagers, who are the vast majority of people who take minimum wage jobs, if our teenagers cannot go out and work for $7.50 an hour because the law says you can't pay them less than $12, if that's what the new minimum wage goes to, but the value of their work is only $9 an hour, I got news for you. We aren't going to hire teenagers to do any work. That means they're going to be deprived of the life experience of working, the responsibility of having a schedule, getting up on time, making it to work, serving, saying thank you and please and my pleasure, right? We deprive them of all of that learning experience to grow their value, to increase their ability to earn more in the future. And we deprive our economy of interacting with these kids. Now we're dealing with computers and robots and automated services because it's cheaper to use a stupid computer to replace something that a teenager could be doing and learning with skills. Minimum wage laws are hateful laws.
It's interesting you bring that up, Tim, because as you know, I do a lot of travel with Life Institute, and I'm in and out of a lot of airports. And there's one that I've been to recently quite often. I am seeing less stores for food services in the airport, but I'm seeing a fair amount of kiosks.
Self-service kiosks.
You can go up there and you can get your pizza. Now, I don't eat pizza, but I saw a long line waiting in line. A long line of people waiting to go up and put their debit card or credit card in there and have this machine pop out a pizza in 2 to 3 minutes. And we are replacing these low-income workers with these robotics. It is happening even today. There's more vending machines in airports, certain ones, the newer ones, than what we're seeing in storefronts to be able to take care of food.
Yeah. And those are things that are certainly impacted by minimum wage laws potentially. Yeah. There are other economic factors that influence this,
Absolutely.
such as the willingness for people to work for any amount. For example, if you're looking at San Francisco, there is nobody who's going to work for minimum wage if they actually have to work, and this is like a legitimate job that they're paying for their life support, their livelihood with. If it really requires, I think you were saying, reading an article, someone was saying you have to have $125,000
$127,000
just
in
to
San
break
Francisco.
even in San Francisco. Well,
Just to break even.
That's because of the insane policies that stupid city has in place to destroy the welfare and the well-being of its citizens. Thank you very much. However, that's a workforce issue. So the kiosks is both a minimum wage and a workforce issue. We're not going to find people who are willing to work for such a low dollar amount.
And we are losing that skill set, that learning. I grew up, I'm 60 years old, but I grew up. I delivered newspapers and then went from delivering newspapers to working at a fast food place, flipping burgers, making fries, doing chicken. I can't say I got life skills out of that, but it got me up in the morning, got me over to the place. I worked, I did my job, I did it well, and I received a pay. Back then it was every week, received a check every week. You know what? There was some value in that. And I also learned how to communicate and work for someone else and take instruction. You know what? It's a good value to have a low-skilled job for a season of life. We're all starting off. Let's not deprive these kids of this, because that's what's going to move them forward. I went shoulder to shoulder with an auto mechanic for a period of time. I would not know automotive mechanics if I didn't rub shoulders with that person for that extended period of time. Mm-hmm. I learned weightlifting from a bodybuilder. He watched me and he was like, "Oh, that poor guy, he's going to break himself." He took me under his shoulder for years and taught me how to do it. You learn by coming alongside somebody, and that's a good thing to do.
Well, you said you didn't take life skills from that job at the fast food restaurants, but you learned diligence, you learned routine, communication, how to be somewhere on time. Like, those are all valuable things that if, we're not even willing to pay our teenagers, they might not receive those same kinds of life skills.
Absolutely.
So that is important, and we shouldn't discount that.
There will be profound societal impacts by having our teenage workforce underskilled and underexperienced.
Yeah.
But they're really good at these little thing called phones, right? They're really good at that.
We give them entertainment rather than work.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
So I think this is Hazlitt. He has this idea in his book where he kind of says, okay, well, let's entertain it. Is there an argument in favor of minimum wage? And the writer says, without the government forcing employers to pay their employees more, the selfishness of the quote unquote evil capitalists will pay them next to nothing. That's kind of the argument you hear in today's pop culture. The wealthy get rich on the backs of the low-wage workers. How often do you hear that?
Those hateful capitalists.
Capitalists. But In a free market, those workers are free to go elsewhere and to provide their labor for greater wages. So the true capitalist is going to pay their people the value that they need to keep them so that they are happy providing their labor for the wages that they earn. I thought that was really well said.
Yeah.
Yeah. So capitalism, true free market capitalism, means that I'm free to pay anybody what they're willing to accept for the labor that they're rendering. So it is a two-sided agreement. What is the labor they're willing to provide, and what is the compensation I'm willing to pay? Yeah. When we have an agreement, we have a job. If they aren't willing to provide the work and I'm not willing to provide the income, then there's no employment. Mm-hmm. Capitalism does not work if I simply say, I'm going to pay you 25 cents an hour. Because if they can go with that same amount of, let's say 40 hours of work and go down and flip burgers and make, $12 an hour, then I'm not going to have anyone working for 12 or for 25 cents an hour. It's just not how the economy works. Yes, absolutely. Businesses pay their employees less than the employees make. If you are ever an employee who's being paid more than you're worth, you should be worried about your job. You will be the first to be let go. You're not providing value to your employer. No employee should be paid what they're worth, right? And I don't mean that to be disrespectful. I mean that to say, look, an employer has to make sure that they're covering overhead. They're meeting their needs. They're also being rewarded for the risk and the leadership and everything that they're doing in the marketplace. So yes, owners, business owners, capitalists should be rewarded for what they do and the value they generate, which means they should be making more off of your labor than you're being paid for it. But there is only so much more they can make off of your labor before you realize that you can go somewhere else and get paid more for the same value you generate for your labor. That's what this point is all about.
And a lot of people focus just on that paycheck. But what about all the benefits that come behind the scenes?
Sure.
There's plenty. And Tim, as an employer, there's those benefits that are in there from the health insurance and retirement plans and things like that. Those are pieces that people just many times don't factor in on that paycheck. They just zone in on that paycheck only.
I think a common argument could be made, okay, well, what about companies that are sending labor overseas so that they can charge pennies instead of charging maybe what someone would be worth here, like slave labor or sweatshops? Like what are your thoughts on that topic?
Yeah. Okay, so there are two different two different sides of this argument.
Sure.
Number one, minimum wage laws forces that to happen. Because remember, I'm not going to employ someone for more than their work is worth. So if you're telling me that I have to, instead of doing $7.25 an hour, I have to do 12, but the work is only worth 8, and I can also, with the same amount of energy, go over to China and pay someone $3 an hour to do the same amount of work and get $8 of value out of it, then I'm better off as a business owner. So minimum wage causes us to lose jobs here in America when we ship them overseas to lower cost environments. That is absolutely one of the impact of minimum wage laws.
Wow. Like
I said, it's a hateful thing. It also causes more mechanization and automation of simple tasks. Yeah. Again, not all of that is bad, but it does result in unemployment for certain low-skilled workers. The other side of the equation is, okay, well, what if we go overseas? And now we've got that evil capitalist putting a sweatshop together to make shoes in China or Vietnam or Myanmar or wherever. Are there concerns there? Yes, there are.
Absolutely, yeah.
There are two different kinds of concerns because there are people doing real evil things with taking advantage of people, not giving them safe work environments and, reasonable breaks and, paying them essentially what is fair. But on the flip side, you also have to recognize that some of these places are so impoverished that getting $2 an hour or $3 an hour is a huge economic step up for them and their entire families. So I don't actually have a problem with paying someone a rate that is meaningfully helpful to their economy, their local area relative to what you could make doing other work. That's like that. Free market economies actually work even in places where there's a lot of poverty, where you can actually improve the overall economy through paying people what are considered living wages by the standard of that locality. Okay, so we've got concerns there. Don't be abusive. Sweatshops are bad. You've got to provide good conditions and safe environments and all of the rest. But to the extent that you do, that's not a bad thing. However, I recognize that it does mean that there's unemployment here in America, which is a bad thing. So we have to balance out both of these concerns.
Now, Tim, weren't you involved in something with getting some coffee from overseas, and it was from different locations where these were they were poor people, and you're
talking about fair trade coffee, fair trade things.
Thank you. You were involved with that and getting that here for our office for coffee for a period of time, and you're helping people that were struggling, but yet we're not dealing with sweatshops and other things, but you were able to raise the tide for them financially.
So I have to do a correction. First of all, no, it's not free trade. I'm sorry, it's not fair trade coffee. Fair trade coffee, if you actually look into it, and this is maybe something for an episode for another day, fair trade coffee actually results in more economic problems and damage for an economy and a society than other forms of business practices. And I can bear that out and kind of lay out that case for you, but I can't do that today. What we're doing was more like business as mission. Gotcha. Where it was a Christian business owner who's going out and getting working with farmers who are generating these beans and are able to pay them a decent rate and use it as a missions effort to develop the economy, to build relationships and share the gospel.
What a great idea. Yeah. And that could be done with any product or service.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that. And I think my wife very much enjoys the 10,000 villages. And they have all types of products from all over where people are creating things of their culture and then bringing it here to the States to sell, but they're raising the tide of the economy in those communities and for those individuals.
Sure.
Wonderful thing.
Yes.
So, Tim, if minimum wage laws are not the solution, what is?
So Henry Hazlitt, in his book, Economics in One Lesson, talks about this. He says, first of all, the question is not whether we want to see everyone as well off as possible. Among men of goodwill, such an aim is taken for granted. We all want to see men as good as they could possibly be. The real question is about what's the proper means of achieving that end. And he says, look, we're going to try to answer that question, but we first must not lose sight of two elemental truths. These are two truisms that I think we have to bear in mind. Number one, we cannot distribute more wealth than what is created. Okay? So if your work generates a certain amount of wealth, the owner can't distribute to you more wealth than you're creating. I think we would agree with that. That's a true statement, right? Fundamentally true. The second truth is we cannot, in the long run, pay labor as a whole more than it produces. Can we agree with that? If the labor doesn't produce that, we can't pay that.
Correct.
Okay, so then what is the best way to raise wages without doing minimum wage laws? If the government's minimum wage laws are hateful and destructive to the poor, is there a better way? Yes. Here's what Hazlitt says. So the best way to raise wages, therefore, is to raise the marginal labor productivity. Pause. English.
Please.
Increase the productivity of that labor. Make it worth more value. Make it generate more revenue, more wealth generation. How do you do that? Well, we're going to get into that in a minute. This can be done by many means. by increasing the capital accumulation, i.e., by increasing the machines by which the workers are aided. So automation to an extent increases productivity.
Give them the right tools to do it.
Absolutely. Give them the right tools. That's a great way of summarizing it. The second way, by new inventions and improvements, by more effective management on part of employers, and by more industriousness and effectiveness on the part of the employees, the workers. And finally, by better education and training. We can increase the amount of productivity if we increase the better tools, better inventions, and improvements in their methodologies, by better management of the employers and better work from the employees and better training and education. If we can do those things, we can increase the output of their labor, and therefore we can increase the amount that we pay them because they're becoming even more valuable. Pause. Tyler, I'm going to point to you. I recently came to you and said, we have a problem. And the problem is you. The problem is you're becoming more valuable. You're creating more value. And I do not want to lose you as a team member. I gave you a raise because of the various things that you are doing to generate even more value. Look, when we increase the value of the work provided, the employer must, if they want to keep that valuable employee, pay them more.
Amen.
You can't pay them less than or more than what they produce, but you absolutely can pay them more than what they were getting before. So that's part of what we're talking about. How do you improve working conditions? How do you improve wages, improve the outputs? Improve the skills and the abilities. Invest in your people. Manage them well. Encourage and motivate them to work hard, to work as unto the Lord for our Christian employers, right? Our Christian employees. He goes on and talks about this. Real wages come out of production, not out of government decrees.
Amen.
Pause.
Mic drop.
Let me repeat that phrase because I really want you to get it. Real wages come out of production, productivity, not out of government decrees, government mandates, minimum wage. He goes on and says, so government policy should be directed not to imposing more burdensome requirements on employers, but to following policies that encourage profits, that encourage employers to expand, that invest in newer and better machines to increase the productivity of their workers. In brief, to encourage capital accumulation instead of discouraging it, to increase both employment and wage rates. The government has a profoundly powerful influence on improving everyone's economic well-being, and it's not through mandates. It's through encouraging investment in companies to do good work, to provide more value, to earn more profits, and when that happens, wages go up.
So scripture that comes to mind, Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. So I think you have more of a reason to work even harder now because you realize that the work you're doing isn't just, it's not just going to go away. Like it's not vapor in the sense, because what you're doing has eternal impacts on, maybe it's the industry you're in, or maybe it's the people around you or the people you're talking to as a result of your work. There are certainly eternal impacts there. And because of that, we can work at it with all we got. And I mean, Tim, as an employer, you know when someone is working at it with all they got, right? That's easy to tell. It's different when you have someone that's there just punching a time clock versus when someone's invested and working hard because they know that the work they're doing is making an impact. I think that's super practical to take away from this. Also, when you called me into your office and said, I have a problem, it's you, that pause between I promise you and you're creating too much value, it felt like 10 years that I could hear my heart rate. And I was when you get called into the president's office and you're going, a problem. Anyway, but I did appreciate that.
Good job, Tim. You did it well.
Keeping me on my toes, man.
You did it well.
I appreciate you, Tyler.
So a good stewardship application for us to, as we've had this, can I just say, it's been a wonderful discussion. Though Tyler and I've sat back and listened to somebody geek out on us. So, but that nerd out.
It's not nerdy. It's not nerdy.
I've been radicalized.
Yeah, you've been radicalized. Oh my, we're in trouble. But let's go back to that last episode. Increase your skills and value.
Yeah.
I mean, Tim, you just shared with that with Tyler and what he's been doing with us on the team here. Phenomenal. Increased skills, values. You know what? A rising tide raises all ships, and that's basically what has happened. And you can complain all you want about your salary. You can complain all you want about all the different benefits and stuff. But the reality is, what have you done to increase that? What have you done to bring more value to not just your team and your company, but yourself? You also need to recognize that you will always be providing more value to the company than you are paid. That's just the nature of the beast. Welcome to capitalism and how it works.
That has to happen, or else the company wouldn't exist.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not capitalism. That's just how that's how God made the world work.
Yeah,
and
that's why socialism doesn't work.
And the bottom line is, the world does not revolve around you, because let's just say it in reality. There's with our parent company, Life Financial, there's a fee that people pay to be able to do things, and that covers salaries, but there's a lot of different layers that are there. And there's copy machines, there's electric, there's a building, there's a camera for a podcast. Sure. There's all those pieces that are in there. So the business owner should be rewarded by the fruits of your labor, because they are taking the risk in having the business and the employee and the people all working together, hopefully harmonizing to create an even better product. And I'm going to go as far as saying day after day, week after week, year after year, that product is doing better. So a key thing, let's get educated. It's time to learn. It's interesting, Tim, you brought these books down. And do you remember, before we started recording this, what Tyler and I both said about the book when you picked the one up?
No, I don't.
I'll remind you. Hey, I just ordered that book on Audible. And what did Tyler say?
Yeah, same thing.
Same thing. So that we both. So
was it this Economics in One Lesson?
Yep.
Or no, there's no free lunch.
I just ordered both.
Yeah.
I just a couple days ago ordered both.
Book.
So and that's one of our other points. Read books. Talk to wise and valuable people. Learn from them. Learn and learn and learn. And copy success. That's a good thing to do. Learn the transferable principles, bring them into your own life to do. A good applicable passage of scripture here is this in Proverbs 22:29. Do you see someone skilled in their work? They will serve before kings. They will not serve before officials of low rank. I shared that last episode. I thought it was appropriate to bring it in for this episode also. This verse underscores that the skillful, diligent work, it elevates your value and it brings reward to you and to your employer. So a very good place for us to be. Mm-hmm. So we've had this amazing discussion on are minimum wage laws harmful? Tim nerded out on us in a good way, And we've seen that while minimum wage laws aim to help, there's a great deal
harm than help.
There's a great deal of harm that happens here. Proverbs 10:4 and Proverbs 22:9 call us to diligence, skill building, increasing our value even more and more and more. Philippians 4:19 assures us that God provides for us as we faithfully work unto him. So what's your next step? What is your next step in your journey? Maybe start a free course. There's a lot of free courses online and maybe even in your community. pick up a book, maybe even one of these economic books that we were talking about.
Yeah, links found in the show notes.
There you go. Or maybe connect with a mentor. Find somebody that you want to learn and grow from and about, and again, grow your skills. So next time as we continue this journey towards biblical stewardship, we want to encourage you, work heartily unto the Lord and continue to get those transferable principles as you learn from others so you can use them so that you can work better unto the Lord and unto your employer.
All right, guys, until next time, take care, God bless, and don't settle for minimum wage. Provide value, work hard, and be rewarded.
Thanks for joining us on the Stewardology Podcast, where financial stewardship and theology meet. We'd like to help you take your next steps in biblical financial stewardship. Subscribe in your podcast provider to get the newest episode delivered to you every week. Leave a 5-star rating and review to help new listeners find the show. Take advantage of your free personal stewardship review at stewardologypodcast.com/review. Be sure to follow us on social media and visit our website at stewardologypodcast.com for tons of free resources and hundreds of free episodes. You can also leave episode ideas at stewardologypodcast.com/idea. Remember, Psalm 20, verse 7, some trust in chariots and some trust in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. See you next week.